Dear audience, spectators, listeners, and all people who enjoyed learning about artificial intelligence. It is my great pleasure to start with a word of thanks to Ming Hai Xion for the invitation which arrived at my desk half a year ago. We had some talk about it and he said, Jaap, I would like to be informed on the recent progress which you made with your group in Leiden University in the Netherlands. I have experience with China. I have been a professor for some time here at the Leiden University, and also I have been invited earlier in the Law and Computer Science workshop conference in 2019. Now I'm returning here in your conference in the Global Artificial Intelligence Technology Conference, and I have high expectations of the outcome, and we try with my PhD student and myself to contribute to this success. I wish you a very good conference. We start with giving you the structure of our presentation. This consists of 3 parts. First, we discuss the history and the significant developments. Thereafter, taking the significant developments, we proclaim the next breakthrough. And the next breakthrough is called iContracts. And I will tell you a little bit about iContracts, but then I will first make the structure. That is towards a global AI regulation, because we can find everything that it should be regulated by law. That's important. I would not like to tell you much about history because that's Joing himself. But then I would like to make the bridge between history and the next breakthrough. Because what we are doing is in law, that is we have law, and we have contracts, and we have digitized contracts. So lawyers have, I would say, a box of digitized contracts. But then, of course, they would like to order the digitized contracts, and then they would like to make them smart contracts. This implies that they could, I would say, anticipate a little bit on that. And now we are on the bridge of the next step. And the next step is if we see the economic developments and we see Ukraine and we see what happens in Gaza, then of course that has impact on the economy. And could a computer program predict that impact on the economy? And we answer, yes, that is true, by intelligent contracts. And we start with the shock of AI for China. And what was the shock? China was in fact sleeping, and sleeping very well, but sometimes it's good to awake. And then China, unfortunately, was awake very roughly, and that's not so fine. What happened to them? They saw that their favorite game, Go, which was, I would say, their possession, in fact, was attacked by artificial intelligence. And even worse, the best player, the world champion of Go, was defeated on 29th of May 2017, and that was a shock for whole China. Now chess, Go and law became early grounds for AI advancement also in China. China plays even a prominent role in the development of that. I give you 2 examples. First of all, in 2019, China organized the Legal Summit, and in 2024, that is now, they organized the Global AI Technology Conference. I'm grateful for being one of the speakers of that last conferences, as I was also in 2019. Now I would like to continue with the contents. How did chess, Go, and law arrive at this point? And that brings us back to the dark myths on the birth of AI. And the dark myths of the birth of AI are well described by Labattu in his book, The Maniac. The Maniac is the title of a program, a first computer program, or first computer in fact, yes. And he is from Chilean origin, but he started really with the founding father, and that was von Neumann. Janos von Neumann, or also well known as Zoon von Neumann. And he brought AI from good to best to genius. And now we are facing the question how to mimic a genius. And of course you are interested in what is the progress so far. And the second one is, what are then the main characteristics of the progress? And of course, what is the future of AI? And also, what is the future of China in combination with AI? That is what we will show you. First of all, I started to make you familiar with John van Neumann's first step. And John van Neumann's first step was in the Minimax search. That was a publication in 1928. And he gave it the title Zur Theorie der Gesellschaftsspiele. Then he worked together with von Morgenstern, and they took some time, but in 1994 they published a common article, and it was the theory of games and economic behavior. That was, again, a breakthrough. In fact, because it was applicable to chess, and this was the start of AI, and that was the start of AI, what was also used for the building up the ENIAC and also the MANIAC. And as you see, the MANIAC, that is the mathematical analyzing numerical integration and automatic computer. And that calculations were already in the beginning used for the thermonuclear processes. And the thermonuclear processes, they were the founding ideas of the A bomb and the H bomb. That implies that Oppenheimer also was interested in the development. And he said, I allow you, in the Los Alamos conferences, I allow you to play computer chess as a training issue. And of course, even there, that was too complex, because he said, we bring back the chessboard from 8 to 8 to 6 to 6. So we omit the bishops. And that implies we had a 6x6 board. And that program, what I developed, that was the first program what was able to defeat a human being, and that was a performance in itself. Let me briefly a little bit dive into the developments in the Netherlands. In the developments of the Netherlands, a guy was guided by Max Euwe. He was also a well-known friend of van Neumann. His first publication, he submitted that for a reading, for a proofreading to van Neumann. And he said, yes, you should publish that. So he was very happy with it. The other one in the Netherlands who is, I would say, well known, that is Adriaan de Groot. He is a psychologist and he is an expert in intuition. We were in the Netherlands not the only one. I would like to mention 3 internationals of reputation. First of all, Alan Turing. Second of all, Claude Shannon. And third of all, Arthur Samuel. I would not like to dive into all the things, but I would like to dive into the contribution to AI, starting with the Minimax method, and then with machine learning. Machine learning, that is in fact parameter tuning. And that was introduced by Arthur Samuel. And here you see Arthur Samuel on the picture. That was also the start of heuristic search. Heuristic search, what are heuristics? Heuristics, in fact, are not proven values, but are estimated values. And the estimated values are estimated by human intuition. And I would say the values could play 2 roles. First of all, they could play the role of giving an estimation of the value of the position. But second, they could also give an estimation of the direction of search of the search tree. And that are 2 different but very important issues. And that is the contribution in the 1920s to 1940s of the artificial intelligence. As you see, with, I would say, the development of the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And I gave it also, especially in, first of all, the community building. That implies not the scientific building, but you can't making progress without communities. So you have to combine all kinds of forces and interested people. In the Netherlands, we did so, first of all, with chess in 1981. Then with artificial intelligence in general, and that is the BNVK, the Belgian Netherlands Association for Artificial Intelligence, and also with legal experts, that is UX, that is juridical expert systems. And that's, I would say, the thing where we, I would say, will focus now, and I will show you some insight into the progress we made from AI to machine learning. And first of all, I said to you already, and that was van Neumann, in fact, already in 2000, 1928 with search, with Minimax. But after the Minimax, we understand that the heuristic had their influence, and so we should, I would say, improve the knowledge representation. And then, as we had the knowledge representation improved in the decade of 1960 to 1970, then we focused on the combination of search and knowledge representation. I would not like to dive into the details, but anyway, that gives you an idea. And then, of course, the technological development increased, and we could also do some kind of things with 2 computers, with 3 computers, if they were, I would say, connected with each other. And if they were not connected with each other, then we could distribute the search problem over the computers. So we emphasized the parallel and distributed search. Then, of course, we came back to special, I would say, cases, and we thought, could we solve cases by case-based reasoning? And case-based reasoning was, I would say, completely, I would say, developed in the last decade of this century, of the previous century. In this century, we have the great breakthrough. All great breakthroughs are based on machine learning. So not anymore on search or knowledge representation, but machine learning is the one. First of all, we would like to learn the machine by adaptation the parameters and the variables, etc. But of course, when we did so, it was better to make it automatic adaptation. And here you see also the help of the Monte Carlo tree search, and I would not like to dive into details, but that is an important issue. Then, of course, there was the discussion, should a computer itself decide that they follow the new ideas? That implies, should we give them some kind of autonomy? And the answer was yes. So we give the computer programs some sense of autonomy. And that also remained when we improved the learning, the machine learning, to deep learning. Here also I would not like to dive into details of deep learning, but deep learning is the key issue of the development of this moment. That deep learning that resulted in all kinds of solutions which we could no longer understand. So we were human beings and the machine apparently did better. But why did it better? What was the background of the thing that it did better? And that should be explained. And so we started a new issue in 2020, and that was, I would say, emphasis on explainable AI. But if we had explainable AI, that was always explained to the users, yes? But, of course, if we brought outside the explainable things, yes, then the judges and the lawyers did not understand. So we should not only explain why the decision was taken, but we should also make them interpretable so that the audience could follow, I would say, the interpretations. And that is the moment, that is the time where we are now sitting in 2022 and 2026. Also, that is a period of 4 years that we have for the interpretation. And I would say the final goal I mentioned here, that is, can we solve the game of chess, for instance? And my prediction is that that will be happen before January 1, 2035. And that will also happen with, I would say, new techniques, especially with quantum technology. So that is the thing. This implies that if we mention quantum technology and law, then we make big step forward. Yes, and that implies that, I would say, the lawyers are far behind. And it's our task as scientists to keep them updated. And that implies we should help them and build a bridge and help them crossing the legal bridge. And that is in both directions. First of all, we should teach the legal professionals the new technology. And second of all, we should help the technicians to understand the legal requirements. And that is the challenge we have nowadays. And the question is, can computers help us with this? Our group, believe that is the case. And I would like to give the floor for this case for the, let's say, the contracts, composing the contracts to our almost doctor, Georgios Stathis. The floor is yours on telling us something on iContracts.
Thank you very much, Professor van den Herik, for the introduction. And I will now take on with the contract automation revolution and evolution. Before delving into the details of contract automation, we need to understand the context, and that is best researched and described by Professor Herik, who gives a great narrative about all the influences of contract automation that come from multiple fields of research, such as preventive or proactive law and management, relational or functional contracting, legal linguistics and argumentation, as well as sustainable and responsible contracting. The evolution of contract automation, of course, starts with physical contracts, which is how people do manual contracting business. And then we moved into the digitalization of contracts, and we started seeing e-signatures, document management, as well as multiple forms of digitizing the contracting process. Then we had a big revolution with the smart contracts, which is basically code executable contracts that essentially a computer is doing half the job of the humans. But there is still a lot of elements missing for a human to fully comprehend a smart contract, such as the interpretability and the explainability, as Jaap mentioned earlier. Therefore, we are now moving to intelligent contracts that is essentially a combination of all of the above: physical, digital, and smart contracts. And their aim is full, if not full, but optimal automation with minimal to no human involvement. The challenges with contract automation are multivariate. And some of the main challenges that we have seen is that a lot of the information that are being exchanged during the contracting process are implicit, and they need to turn from implicit into explicit. And the two main categories of explicit information that need to be worked on in research based on our data findings are communications and risk analysis data. This is why we went into the largest legal tech solution database, Legal Complex, to validate whether our initial research findings were right. And after researching thousands of legal technology solutions, we found that only 8.6% of the total contract automation solutions are focusing on contract communications and only 8.4% on contract risk automations. Surprisingly, both for us as researchers, as well as the owners of the Legal Complex database, there was no solution focusing on both contract communication and contract risk. As a result, we started developing a very specific case study from a contracting automation case so that we start seeing how iContracts based on communications and risk automation develop in practice. And we started looking at freelancer agreements and how people negotiate, how business people negotiate. And we call it the Onassis ontology as tribute to our great inspirator, Aristotle Onassis, who was great at negotiations, and his negotiation teachings and tactics have been vast. And he was explicitly really good with risk analysis, especially in relation to legal risk analysis, as we have seen in literature. Now, during that risk analysis process, by analyzing and making explicit the risks, we can structure better how a negotiation looks, and as a result, we can have a more optimal outcome than we would have without having explicit risk analysis. And of course, provided that communication is the basis of negotiations, and provided that during a negotiation there is a lot of risks that are inherent throughout the negotiation between parties, by analyzing the two, we are able to even reach higher optimization levels. And as a result, we lead to faster, safer, and more trustworthy execution as well as evaluation of contracting automation processes. Here we will see a visual example of how the Onassis ontology works. We have, on the one hand, the legal expert who defines a specific scope as well as a specific agreement. And for each specific agreement, they are able to make explicit specific risks. We will see in the next slide how the risk analysis happens. And then, based on what information are needed in the contract, they do define specific questions that the contractors can answer And depending on the reply, a variable can be extracted that inserts a value in the contract, and as a result, we have a full automation that leads from authentication to signature in the most optimal way. And to mention that this happened this development of the ONAS ontology happened in collaboration with TNO, the Netherlands Institute of Applied Scientific Research, as well as with Leiden University and independent researchers. Now, as we see on this slide, the risk analysis is basically based on the bow-tie method that developed out of chemical research and later on in cell technologies, and for the analysis of hazardous events in oil and gas. And basically, how it works is that there is a hazardous event that had a specific cause as well as a specific consequence. And in order to avoid the specific hazardous event based on the cause, we can define a proactive control. And to mitigate the consequences of a hazardous event happening, we can also define a reactive control. And for as long as we're able to assign a probability and impact level, we can identify the overall risk level. And through this process, which can be applied at any level of the contracting automation process, we can have a way more explicit identification of risks. And as a result, improve the negotiations and the content of the contracts as well as the execution. Now, when we're looking at our innovation from the perspective of users, we need to be mindful because, as Professor Van den Herik explained earlier, next to next to explainable AI, there is also the interpretable AI. So for a user to be able to interpret the results of the system, there should be certain standards set in place. And of course, not everybody has the scientifically analytic mind to directly comprehend a very complex risk analysis. So we did multiple user studies, and we identified that even though in general the trustworthiness level increases by demonstrating the risk analysis, there is still multiple steps to be improved in how we visualize a risk analysis, and we're still working on that direction. During the survey we conducted, we asked our users to assign a number from 0 to 10 to the level of trustworthiness they feel for a graphical user interface that on the one hand demonstrate no risk analysis on the one hand, and that is 0, and then a lawyer or a legal expert who explains fully to them what is the risk they're facing in a specific contract. And our users found that the increase in user trustworthiness is 6.9 for our method, which is basically visualizing the risk analysis. And of course, 6.9, it is a good enough number, but not sufficiently good for a large technological breakthrough yet, and we're still working on that. And there is additional impact to users, such as the productivity level, anxiety reduction level, satisfaction level, and we also looked at the referral of likelihood. The implications of our research are multivariate. First of all, it is a practical tool that helps people conduct better business. Secondly, it is paving a new direction for ontology engineering research. It can also have an impact on contract negotiations, and it is also an advanced framework for managing contract risk in the contract automation literature. And of course, as a result, we are also seeing a changing role for the legal expert as well as for end users in the contracting process. That raises multiple questions, both for us as researchers as well as for you as the audience. Where are we now with AI? How can AI help? And what is the impact that our research and AI have for this field of research for the future? And is there even a possibility for full intelligent automation? We need to have certain considerations in mind. The main one being that AI is already used for predicting entrepreneurial outcomes, and it is already assisting business people, although in mostly generic cases. And even though entrepreneurs are great at predicting outcomes for themselves, in the future we will see a larger increase for specific predictions, especially in relation to risks for specific domains. And for more macro economical relationships and negotiations, we will see how AI will have an impact as part of a communication and risk strategy on a larger scale. And of course, in relation to iContracts, we do focus and we do believe that a higher level of trustworthiness can be achieved with research, but also the direction of the research leads to having more trustworthy outcomes for risk visualization as well as an analysis of risk for all the stakeholders involved in the contracting process, both from back-end engineers as well as contracting end users. And now I give the floor back to Professor van der Herik, who will look at the conclusions of work and to arrive at his predictions about how AI is shaping up for the future.
Thank you, Georgios, for the clear presentation. Now people understand that we are, I would say, on the border of, I would say, new improvements and exciting improvements. And that implies that entrepreneurs and legal advisors, they will use iContracts. And even not that only, they will also attack n-dimensional chess games, not only two-dimensional, but n-dimensional. And the most important points there are explainability, interpretability, and that's the last one we did mentioned before, trustworthiness. Trustworthiness is a very important point. The system can give advices and also can advises based on entrepreneurial decisions. And that is the next, I would say, step we would like to make. So that is, I would say, non-technical challenges, cultural challenges, and ethical constraints should be taken into account. That already happens because everybody here in the audience knows that there is a breakthrough on November 30, 2022 with ChatGPT. ChatGPT was launched by OpenAI, yes, and it means, in fact, G is generative, pre-trained by P, and transformation. That implies that we have, I would say, the thing that we can generate new ideas. We train already the new ideas in advance, yes, and then we perform the transformation, yes. It is a perfect handyman for all of us. And there are many things which we can do that. They can be for writers, for lawyers, for entrepreneurs, etc. And the whole world lies open to them. The future is also involved, what I mentioned already earlier, for can we solve chess? And von Neumann's ultimate question was twofold. First, can we solve it weakly? And weakly means can we determine with confirmation that it is a win for white, a draw or a win for black? But can we also strongly solve it? And that is, can we produce an optimal line from the beginning? And my opinion is that we can do that. And that we can do that before January 1, 2035. Nowadays, AI is everywhere. At the ECAI, the European Conference on Artificial Intelligence, the ICSCAI, the International Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence, and in the Ukraine. The ultimate question here reads, also formulated by John von Neumann, will silicon win over carbon? Yes. That competition, in my prediction, will be played between humans and machines, artificial intelligence, between 2014 and 2100. My conclusion is that the human community has headed the A-bomb and the H-bomb by the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Yeah, it is called the UNODA, and that is the nuclear ban treaty. So we should ban the nuclear things out of our world. The advice is to our human community that they should head the AI threat by introducing a Silicon AI treaty. And I refer to Geoffrey Hinton in the download of May 4, 2023. For your attention, my colleague, friend Georgios and myself, we give already in a scientific publication attention to this issue. Finally, I would like to thank you for the invitation, and we do that not only orally but also in writing, that means on the screen. Thank you very much for having us here, and also thank you for giving my PhD student Georgios also the opportunity to explain the new steps forward. Thank you.